My beloved child, imagine yourself as an experienced translator in the spiritual domain. Here is the English rendering, faithful in meaning and tone. Organized into paragraphs as requested, there are moments amid the noisy, weary current of life when our soul is suddenly stirred by something profound that cannot be named. It is not the sound of the world, nor the speech of people, but a reminder, light as a passing breeze, yet full of authority, coming from the one beyond all comprehension. He does not arrive in storms, nor appear in flashes of lightning. He comes through silence, to awaken humanity from the dream they have mistaken for reality. Then the heart begins to perceive something is under threat. Not career, not relationships, not possessions, but the most intimate essence of life itself, the soul. For far too long we have lived as if nothing mattered more than what can be seen. Yet a reality is speaking. A sovereign is intervening not to condemn, but to redeem. He sees what we fail to notice, the dangers creeping like shadows behind the deceptive veil of stability. You who are reading these words, ask yourself, how weary is your heart from striving to make everything seem right? How many nights have you questioned whether you are on the right path, only to bury that question under work, duty, and noise? The one calling is not condemning you for weakness, but he knows the turns you are taking and where they can lead. Some paths begin with comfort, yet end in decay. Some choices appear wise, but quietly steal the substance of true life. There is a silent enemy that has entered the human heart without knocking. That enemy is fear. Not the obvious fear of accidents, illness, or adversity, but the invisible unease that infiltrates, corrodes every thought, and suffocates every dream. It comes in the darkness of the mind, whispering, "You will fail. You are not enough. You cannot trust anyone." Those words are nurtured day by day, becoming unseen barriers that keep a person from living into their calling. The truth is, no one is born knowing fear. It is a learned response, cultivated by painful experiences, hurtful words, and past failures that have left their mark. The most dangerous aspect is when people no longer recognize that fear is steering them. They give it respectable names: prudence, reason, realism, but beneath all of it lies paralysis. Afraid to love, afraid to commit, afraid to trust anything greater than themselves. When fear has taken hold, people begin to lose the ability to hear the voice from above. They only hear echoes of ego, public opinion, and imposed expectations. From there, they live in an anxious loop, trying to control everything while constantly feeling that everything is slipping beyond their grasp. They wake each day with a to-do list, yet never find rest. They look to the future as into a gray fog, forgetting that one has gone before them, knowing every step. People often think, if I control enough, then everything will be safe. But the truth is, the tighter the grip, the deeper the insecurity they strive to achieve, yet never feel sufficient. True security does not come from what one can hold on to, but from knowing who holds you. When the heart is not anchored in a being greater than itself, then regardless of wealth, success, or fame, one still lives in fear, fear of loss, fear of failure, fear of being forgotten. This world offers many fears: of being hurt, abandoned, or rejected. But the one who calls people out of darkness does not demand perfection. He invites trust, not blind trust, but a grounded faith because he is faithful, unchanging amid the shifting shadows. In a world of constant change, there is one who never changes, and in him, fear is dethroned. People ask, how can I not be afraid when I am weak? Perhaps the truer question is, what will I do with my weakness? For if it is brought to the feet of a loving, unconditional sovereign, even weakness becomes the place where grace operates. It is in weakness that one realizes they cannot save themselves, and that moment is when truth begins to shine through. An ancient story still echoes today about a man alone in the night, wrestling not with another, but with the fear within that he is unworthy, not strong enough, not brave enough. Then, in his deepest weakness, he realizes he does not need to be strong. He only needs to recognize that the one stronger than him is present. When the dawn breaks, he no longer carries his old name. He has been renewed, not through perfection, but through surrender. You who are listening, if you feel surrounded by negative thoughts or unnamed forebodings, pause. Do not overanalyze. Do not force yourself into false assurances. Be honest with your fear and bring it before the one who is inviting you. He is not surprised by your fear, nor does he reject it. He desires to bear it so that you no longer have to carry it. True peace does not arise from all circumstances being resolved, but from knowing you are not alone. When the presence of the holy enters the space of fear, the darkness is compelled to retreat. Then you begin to feel something new, not the fleeting safety of the world, but the steadiness born of faith that even if storms rise, you stand firm. For your foundation is not emotion, but truth. There is another burden people carry quietly, not on their shoulders, but in their minds. The pressure to do enough, be enough, prove enough. It has no visible shape, yet it inhabits every thought that they must accomplish more, be better than others. Only then will they have value. People begin to live as if there is a countdown clock behind them, preventing them from ever truly resting. The world paints idealized pictures of success, degrees, reputation, wealth, influence. Without being prompted, each person turns into an athlete in a race with no finish line. They run faster than the one beside them, climb higher than the one before, maintain a better image than the observer. Yet no matter how many peaks they reach, they feel insufficient because they never ran for themselves. They ran out of fear of being left behind, forgotten, or abandoned. In that race, people trade away the most precious thing, ease of heart. They become vulnerable to others' judgment, hypersensitive to failure, and increasingly estranged from their true essence. They begin living under the shadow of expectation rather than guided by the one who formed them. They wear garments of competence, toughness, and independence, while inside a weary heart searches for a place to lay down. Perhaps the issue is not that people dream too much, but that they forget why they dream. They set their goals on what the world honors, instead of what brings real life. They measure themselves by metrics, likes, and achievements without pausing to ask, am I living according to the purpose for which I was created? The truth is, each person was made with a unique mission, but in striving to fit someone else's mold, they will always feel lacking. It is time to release the illusion of needing to make everything perfect. Not every closed door is failure. Sometimes it is protection. Not every unrealized dream is proof of inadequacy, perhaps it is preparation incomplete. The Creator does not evaluate by transient outcomes, but by a faithful heart. He does not care how fast you run, but whether you are running in the right direction. The pressure to be perfect is a gilded cage, seemingly noble, yet imprisoning the soul. It convinces people they must do something to be worthy, while the truth is, no one can do enough to save themselves. That is why grace exists as a gift that cannot be bought or earned, only received by faith. And when one accepts that gift, they no longer run to prove. They begin to live from a place of acceptance. A poignant example is the life of a woman in ancient times without fame or influence. She did a small thing with a full heart. She broke a jar of precious perfume to anoint the feet of the Holy One. The act was imperfect by the religious standards of her day, yet it was remembered forever by the Eternal, because He does not look at outward form but at sincere love. Not every grand deed is credited, but a deed done with a wholehearted heart is always remembered. O bearer of the weight of achievement, grant yourself permission to rest, not to step away from labor, but to step away from the relentless striving to become enough. Stop, take a deep breath, and ask your heart, what am I living for? If the answer is to be accepted, then perhaps you have placed your trust in the wrong source. For the most enduring acceptance does not come from the world, but from the one who chose you before you even knew how to choose Him. When you cease living to please others and begin living to glorify the name of the one who formed you, you will feel a lightness in your soul, not because everything becomes easier, but because you know with clarity where you are headed. Then each step gains purpose, not to prove something, but to fulfill a journey that was ordained long before your feet set out. True freedom does not come from mastering everything, but from knowing you are being led by one who never errs. When you entrust your path into His hands, you will realize, even in your imperfection, you are loved. And when you live from that foundation, you no longer have to run because you are already accepted, seen, and named. Every effort thereafter is no longer an attempt to earn love, but a response to the love already given. Amid the countless voices of life, there is a whisper often ignored, the inner reminder that humanity was born not merely to exist, but to live meaningfully, purposefully, and with soul. Yet today, people seem to have traded their souls for busyness, achievement pressure, and societal expectations. They fail to perceive that they are gradually drifting away from the true life granted at the beginning. It is no coincidence that internal disarray, depression, confusion, loss of direction is surging in an era when people have more resources than ever. They possess means, conveniences, and access to vast knowledge, yet lack peace. They can connect with the whole world and still feel isolated in their own rooms. Something is being wounded, and it is not rooted in outward circumstances, but arises from within. One of the deepest causes of inner fracture is that people have slowly replaced the voice of the Creator with other voices, the voice of fame, money, status, and human approval, when what matters most is no longer integrity of spirit but the gaze of the crowd. The heart is never at rest. They live as actors, constantly performing the roles of strong, resilient, successful, while inside they are weary and cracked. The first barrier to face is internal pretense. Not everyone is honest with themselves. Many have grown accustomed to assuming everything is fine, even when they clearly sense the fissures within. They fear admitting hurt because they equate vulnerability with failure. They evade difficult questions, afraid that answers will demand change. Yet it is that very evasion that becomes the source of prolonged suffering. Some rise quietly each morning and convince themselves they are living rightly. They enter the grind of work, relationships, responsibilities like programmed machines. But when night falls and noise fades, they confront an unfillable void, not because they lack money, friends, or opportunity, but because they lack genuine connection to the sacred source of their being. They do not know where they are going because they have never truly stopped to ask. Another barrier is spiritual complacency. Many believe they need nothing beyond themselves, that they are strong and wise enough to steer their own lives. Yet a time always comes when human wisdom is insufficient to face the trials ahead. Fleeting success cannot withstand lasting emptiness. Temporary control cannot satisfy spiritual belonging. Then they discover, not every question can be answered by reason alone. Some truths only become clear when placed in the light of revelation. Complacency stops people from seeking. They assume they know enough, understand enough, control enough. The irony is that the more they convince themselves they need no more, the further they drift from the source of life. No one is too strong to need guidance. No one is too great to need correction. And no one is too wise to stop learning from the one wiser than all. The third barrier is the habit of postponing change. Some recognize the misalignment in their hearts. They know they are drifting from genuine values, but they are not yet ready to change. They wait for a better time, a more favorable condition, a stronger motivation. Yet time does not wait, and spiritual hardening does not pause. Every day of delay is a missed opportunity for renewal. Every compromise takes them further from the path of life. Procrastinating spiritual transformation is self-deception. People believe they can choose the moment to repent, to return, to listen. But no one knows how many opportunities remain. The light may still be here today, but no one can guarantee that tomorrow the heart will be soft enough to receive it. Therefore, the call is urgent, not because the Holy One is impatient, but because his love is too deep to let humanity continue self-destruction. Once, a reverent soul said, "Some opportunities do not come twice, not because God is unmerciful, but because human hearts are so easily forgetful. When a warning resonates in the soul, it is grace. And when a person responds with listening and obedience, they enter a process of profound transformation, not by their own strength, but by the guidance of the one who made them." So if today someone feels a stirring, of wrestling, a question about the direction of life, do not extinguish it. Do not tuck it away in some corner of the mind to deal with later. Face it. Be honest. Be brave. For the first step toward healing is recognizing the need for healing. And the first step toward reclaiming life is admitting that one is lost. In the modern world, emotions are exalted as personal compasses. Do what makes you happy. Follow your heart. If it feels right, do it. These sayings sound positive, but beneath them lies an unseen danger, building life's foundation on something unstable rather than on what is firm. Emotions, though a real part of humanity, are never reliable enough to be the guiding star of life. Emotions are like waves rising, falling, calm, turbulent. Some days a person is full of faith, I hope, and motivation. Other days, for no clear reason, Their spirit sinks. They doubt, grow weary, and want to give up. If one lives solely according to emotions, they will soon find themselves adrift, carried by the ever-shifting currents of personal mood. Emotions are not evil. They are part of the structure the Creator gave humanity. But they were not designed to drive. Their role is that of a passenger on the journey, not the one steering. When people let emotions lead instead of truth, their decisions become unstable. They are quick to part ways when temporarily hurt, quick to abandon when temporarily exhausted, quick to doubt when immediate results are not visible. Some begin something good, a relationship, a commitment, a spiritual journey, and later quit simply because the emotion no longer feels the same. They think, "I don't feel it like before, so it must no longer be right." But the truth is, shifting feelings do not mean the truth has shifted. What is right remains right, whether today it feels near or far. What is good remains good, whether today one feels weary or not. When people learn to distinguish between emotion and truth, they enter a significant stage of spiritual maturity. They no longer live by transient feelings, but by inner conviction rooted in something far firmer. They cease being swayed by every external wind of opinion, and instead cling to what was sown in their hearts from the most reliable source, a truth that does not change with feelings, circumstances, or seasons. A profound testimony to this is found in the journeys of those who endured severe trials. They may have walked through dark days when they felt nothing, no hope, no presence, no answer, yet they continued. Not because they felt strong, but because they believed in what they knew to be true. That enduring faith became evidence of a genuine belief, one based not on emotion but on commitment. The danger of living by emotion is not only its volatility, but its susceptibility to manipulation. A story, a memory, a glance, a word, any of these can misdirect emotion. When people do not anchor their trust in something solid, they will always waver. They become overly vulnerable, disproportionately disappointed, and too ready to give up. Inner instability produces chaotic external decisions. Perhaps people today need to relearn something simple but fundamental. Stability does not come from feeling right, but from holding fast to what is right. Like the farmer who sows seed before the harvest is visible, like the sailor who keeps the helm steady when waves rise. The spiritually mature choose to do what is right, even when their hearts are not stirred with enthusiasm. They understand that emotions will shift, but what is built on truth endures. A vivid illustration is the story of someone who endured betrayal from a close friend. In that moment, his emotions were anger, disappointment, and heartbreak. Instead of acting on those feelings, he paused and chose to respond out of an understanding of mercy, grace, and human complexity. Because of that, rather than deepening the rupture, he became part of the healing process. That is not weakness, it is genuine strength, the capacity to rise above feeling in order to live in accordance with truth. In a world that exalts emotion, those who dare to live by what is true become distinct. They are not cold or numb, but sufficiently clear-eyed to recognize that there is something higher than feeling, something worth building a life upon. When someone lays the foundation of their life on truth, they are no longer tossed by the dizzying swings of emotion. They walk with steadiness, depth, and maturity. So if today someone feels weary, disappointed, or confused, Do not allow those emotions to define you. Remember that feelings are real, but not always accurate. Listen to them, but do not let them lead unilaterally. Lift your gaze to what does not change, what transcends temporary tides of feeling, and see that a path is opening, solid and safe. Even if your heart is storm-tossed today, one of the quiet, corrosive forces in the inner life is constantly weighing oneself against others. From childhood, people are taught to be better, to stand out, to seek more praise. Gradually, the internal frame of reference shifts. Self-worth is no longer assessed by one's own presence, but by whether one is more than someone else. At that point, one ceases to live authentically and begins to exist as a competitor in an invisible race with those around them. Comparison can begin with the smallest things: appearance, speech, career, family, relationships. A glance, a compliment to another, can make someone feel diminished. Instead of being grateful for what they have, their hearts grow restless over what they lack. They fail to perceive the uniqueness of their own journey because their attention is drawn toward the paths others are walking. Thus, comparison not only creates a sense of deficiency, it blurs the clarity of purpose. No one can live fully while constantly measuring themselves against someone else's life. It is like an orange tree looking at a mango tree and feeling worthless. Each person is born with a distinct calling, a different pace, an irreplaceable role. When that is not acknowledged, they will forever feel inadequate. Worse, they lose precious time that could have been invested in developing themselves. Some look at others' success and feel inferior. Some see friends who seem more stable or happier and begin to believe they are wrong. They do not ask whether that path fits them. They only feel pressure to catch up, prove themselves, surpass. So they rush into choices, not born of illumination but of imitation, pressure. That is how many lose direction, not because they lack orientation, but because they chase someone else's course. Comparison also causes people to lose honesty with themselves. They do not admit what they truly love or what they truly need, fearing it is small, different, or unworthy. They reject authentic longings to pursue timely goals. But what is timely isn't necessarily aligned with the soul. A seemingly enviable life may not be a fulfilling one. Fulfillment comes when a person lives in tune with the inner call, a call that becomes muffled when we are overly attentive to external voices. Ironically, those who compare constantly are the ones most prone to lose their way. Instead of tending what they have been entrusted, they peer over fences to admire their neighbor's garden. But no one really knows what is happening behind that well-kept facade. No one sees the hidden pain beneath the perfect photo, the crises behind a celebrated success. Everyone has their own battle, but when we view another's life only by its surface, we always feel defeated. The remedy is not to strive, never to compare, but to transform the internal frame of reference. When a person realizes they are uniquely made with their own gifts, journey, and mission, they become less threatened by others' success. They learn to rejoice in good things that come to others without letting it diminish their own value. They see themselves as a precious part of a larger whole, no need to mimic or outdo anyone, only to be faithful in their own portion. A potter does not demand that an earthen vessel look like a bronze one. Each vessel is shaped differently to hold something distinct. Likewise, each person is an irreplaceable piece in a larger picture. When they live according to the form the Creator gave them, They find peace not because they are above others, but because they know they are in their right place. There is a crucial question everyone should ask. With whom am I comparing myself? And why? If the answer is, because I see them as more talented, more attractive, more successful, then that is not a reason to doubt your own worth. Instead, return to truth. Value does not come from superiority or inferiority, but from essence. Essence cannot be altered by comparison. When people choose to let go of comparison, they feel lighter. They no longer strive to be enough by someone else's standard. They do not feel unsettled each time another succeeds. They begin to learn the art of gratitude for what they have, for the journey they are on, for the real, even small opportunities before them. From that place they walk not under competitive pressure, but with the joy of becoming themselves. Finally, remember that the greatest freedom does not come from being better than others, but from no longer needing to be better. When someone learns this, they are released from the invisible trap of inadequacy and step into a life that is easier, clearer, and deeper. There are times in life when a person feels they have reached their limit. Every effort seems meaningless, every plan hollow, every success unable to fill the dryness within. It is precisely in those moments when every support trembles that a question rises, stronger and more profound than anything else. What truly brings life? That question is not weakness. It is the first step of an awakening journey. Awakening does not come from external noise, but from a quiet inward shift. It begins when a person realizes they cannot keep going by reason, discipline, or ambition alone. It originates from the sense that their soul is hungry for something deeper, more genuine, more lasting. When that hunger is acknowledged, the heart begins to seek not to acquire more, but to return closer to the true source of life. That search is not a journey outward, but an inward pilgrimage to the deepest part of oneself where the sacred voice has not been silenced. It is there that faith, when rooted again rightly, will sprout like green shoots after rain. But to return, one must release what has held them tightly: prejudices, pride, pain, false beliefs. Letting go is not easy, but it is the gate to true freedom. Some believe they must be perfect before they can return. They hesitate to approach the divine, thinking they are not good enough, not worthy, too broken. The truth is, no one becomes whole before coming back. It is the act of returning that opens the way to healing. It is not the movement of the already complete, but the humble step of one who admits they cannot continue alone. Imagine yourself as a seasoned translator in the realm of the spiritual. Here is the English rendering, faithful in meaning and attuned in tone, presented in paragraphs as requested. The father always waits at the gate, not because the child has become good enough, but because love is unconditional. There is no distance too great to return from. There is no wound too deep to be healed. There is no failure too vast to be redeemed. Everything begins to shift when a person dares to face their own reality with honesty, no blame, no rationalizing, just the simple admission, I need something more than what I currently have. Is. Someone once said, we truly change only when the pain of remaining the same becomes greater than the fear of change. Indeed, often it is only when weariness exceeds endurance that a person is willing to let go. The miracle is that in the very moment they surrender, a new power begins to work, not originating from themselves, but from the one to whom they turn. That power not only lifts them up but reorients each next step. That return does not have to happen in a formal setting or through elaborate ritual. It can occur in a quiet, humble moment in a private room, when someone bows their head in trembling and says, "I don't know where to go. Please guide me." What seems like weakness is in fact the strongest prayer, because it opens the door to guidance from the one who never errs. From that moment, a process begins, quiet, yet potent. The person no longer walks alone. They no longer seek meaning in fleeting things. Each day, each action, each choice begins to be shaped by a higher reality, not "what do I want?" but "what is right in the eyes of the one who made me." When the center of life is realigned, everything around it gradually falls into its proper place. Notably, not every problem disappears immediately when someone returns. Sometimes the trials remain. Adversity is still present, and answers do not come instantaneously. But there is a profound difference. They are no longer alone in the battle. They now have a foundation, a source of strength, a presence that is always there, not to erase every difficulty, but to walk through each one with them, with steadiness. A vivid example of this journey of return is the lives of those who once lived in utter despair, addiction, hopelessness, bankruptcy, rejection. But then, in their darkest hour, they hear a gentle inner call, "Come back." When they respond, even with a clumsy prayer, a hesitant step, a small act, their entire life begins to turn, not because they found an escape, but because they restored a connection that had been severed. So if today someone feels a quiet yearning in their heart, a vague longing for something sacred, do not extinguish it hastily. It is not an illusion. It is a sign of life stirring awake. It is the call of a love that has never given up. And perhaps just a whispered word, a lifted gaze, a simple decision is enough to begin the journey back to the source of life. When a person returns to their spiritual origin, the first thing restored is not their external circumstance, but their internal world. Everything around them may remain unchanged. Work pressures persist. Relationships remain complex. Unanswered questions still linger, but something begins to shift subtly and steadfastly. Their attitude toward themselves, toward life, and toward the one they have chosen to trust. True restoration begins with the recognition that one does not have to strive to earn love, because genuine love has always been present. Not every love demands exchange. There is a love beyond conditions and standards, one that sees every flaw yet stays, that knows every weakness yet reaches out in welcome. When that is deeply received, the heart cannot help but change. One no longer lives to be worthy, but to respond. The response is not a display, but faithful devotion in the small things. When someone becomes aware that they are loved, not because they have done everything right, but because they were uniquely made, they begin to live with humility. Not false humility or self-deprecation, but a quiet peace that comes from healthy self-acceptance. They no longer feel the need to prove their worth, because they know where that worth originates. There is a profound truth. People can only truly love others when they have learned to love themselves rightly. Right self-love begins when they see themselves through the gaze of the one who made them. It is no longer a gaze of judgment, reproach, or disappointment, but one filled with patience, hope, and mercy. When a person starts to reflect themselves in that light, they cease to hate their past or feel shame for previous missteps. They see that everything can be used to shape, refine, and prepare them for something greater. Spiritual renewal does not come from forcing oneself to change, but from allowing light to shine into the dark places that have never been touched. There are wounds thought forgotten that still quietly influence. Words spoken long ago that seem to have passed but have carved deep impressions on self-perception. Returning is the opportunity to bring all of that into the light, not to condemn, but to heal. In that process, tears fall, not out of sorrow, but because the heart is being touched. These are moments when one realizes they no longer have to strain, no longer need to wear masks. They can breathe easier, knowing they are no longer responsible for saving themselves. There is someone doing that not by coercion, but through steadfast love. And when that love is genuinely felt, it breaks every chain in the mind. One person shared, "I learned to forgive myself not because I forgot what was wrong, but because I was no longer imprisoned by it." Self-forgiveness does not mean justifying sin, but viewing the past with compassion like the way the Holy One looks upon us. Then, a person no longer lives in shame, but in gratitude, not because everything that happened was good, but because every experience can be used to bring forth something new. When the heart is healed, the way one sees others changes too. People judge less, criticize less, and respond with greater empathy. They understand that everyone is fighting their own battles, often unseen, yet real. They no longer carry the attitude of, "I am better," but live with, "I have been there too." From that place their hearts widen, their words soften, and their actions become more healing than contentious. Paradoxically, the more one is healed inwardly, the less one needs outward things to feel enough. The constant seeking of affirmation subsides. Dependence on others' approval diminishes. They live in inner peace not derived from circumstances, but from an unbroken connection with the one who created them. That becomes a quiet strength, not loud, but unshakable. True restoration is not a return to the old self, but stepping into a renewed version more mature, clearer, led more by truth. It is not going back to where one once stood, but returning to the one from whom they had drifted. The difference is immense. One can live within religion without a personal relationship with the holy, but when that relationship is restored, everything else falls into its rightful order. So if today someone senses they are in that process, not yet complete, but underway, keep going. Do not rush. Do not lose heart. Know that each step, however small, draws them closer to true life. And no one walks this journey alone. There is someone quietly accompanying, supporting, correcting, loving, not because humanity is whole, but because he is the source of restoration. One of the first things that happens when a person's spirit is renewed is the rediscovery of the meaning of their own life. Previously, purpose may have been defined by survival, ambition, or the applause of others. But when connection with the divine is re-established, those things begin to fade. Instead, questions arise. What was I made for? Why am I here in this world? From those questions, a new direction gradually emerges. Imagine that your life's purpose, when placed on a sacred foundation, is no longer a pressure to achieve something grandiose. It becomes an invitation to walk step by step, with faithfulness in the small things, with gratitude for each opportunity to live authentically. A person who lives with purpose does not necessarily have to change the world, but they alter the small world around them by the way they live, love, and relate to others. Some have believed that living with purpose means doing something magnificent, building a dazzling career, attaining resounding fame, or leaving behind a legacy that people will speak of. Yet the truth is that the quiet lives often carry the most enduring influence, not because they stand out, but because they are true. They need no stage, no applause, no spotlight, yet wherever they pass, something has been sown, something has been restored, something has been realigned. When one lives with awareness of the purpose entrusted to them, everything begins to be done with a new attentiveness. They no longer act merely out of obligation, but out of presence. They no longer do things simply because they must, but in collaboration with something greater than themselves. Whether washing dishes, teaching, writing, or caring for a loved one, they understand that every deed can bear significance if performed with a heart oriented upward. One of the signs of a soul that has been healed is gentleness in action. There is no longer the need to strain, no rush, no obsession with achievement, but an inner steadiness that makes even the smallest task whole. They do not act to be seen, but because they know they are contributing to a grand design that the Creator has ordained. A vivid illustration of this is the image of a craftsman seated in his workshop, quietly, meticulously, needing no praise. Yet every piece he creates carries the mark of care, because he knows it will reach someone and serve a purpose. He is not the one in the spotlight, but the one who keeps the whole stage functioning. And the same is true for those living ordinary lives with extraordinary posture. When a person begins to live in alignment with their purpose, they also start learning the art of timely refusal. Not every invitation needs acceptance. Not every opportunity should be pursued. They begin to distinguish between what is good and what is truly fitting. They do not chase every open door, because they know not all of them lead to the call they have received. This clarity does not arise from personal calculation, but from listening, a capacity that can only be nurtured in relationship with the guiding one. Today's world measures people by outcomes, but the one who formed us does not first look at results. He looks at faithfulness. Some sow and never see the harvest, but that does not mean they have failed. Some live their whole lives influencing only a few, but that does not lessen their worth. True value is not in scale, but in the quality of obedience. Obedience in the smallest things can open doors far greater than we imagine. Another distinctive mark of one who lives with a sacred purpose is steadiness amid turbulence. They are not swept away by sudden success, nor crushed by temporary failure, for they know that what they are doing is not to answer the world, but to respond to the sacred call within. Each day becomes an offering, unostentatious, yet weighty. Some ask, how do I know my purpose? The answer does not always come all at once. It begins to take shape when a person lives with a soft heart, willing to follow what is right, even without seeing the full picture. Purpose does not always have to be found. Sometimes it is evolved through faithful steps. Begin where you are. Live well in what has been given to you. Listen to what burns within your heart, what keeps you awake, what stirs you to serve, what makes you want to live fully. When that happens, each day ceases to be merely a list of tasks and becomes part of a journey authored by the one who made you. Not everyone will understand the path you take, But if you know you are walking rightly, others' understanding ceases to be central. What matters most is that your heart is at peace and you are living a life not wasted. A healed soul does not stop at internal change. Like pure water released, it will find its way outward. Faith, once rooted deep within a person, begins to bear fruit, not in words, but in transformed life. Then faith is no longer an abstract concept, but a tangible reality that can be seen, felt, and spread. There is a common mistake in thinking that faith belongs only in places of worship, in hours of prayer, or in quiet moments with God. True faith does not remain confined to sacred moments. It must step into everyday life where pressure, conflict, and trials exist. Real faith does not avoid reality. It brings light into places where reality is dim. And it is precisely in ordinary circumstances that faith proves its depth, authenticity, and endurance. Living out faith does not necessarily mean doing something dramatic. Sometimes it is choosing to speak kindly instead of responding in anger. It is being honest when lying would be easier. It is choosing forgiveness not because the other deserves it, but because you know you have been forgiven. It is continuing to hope, even when everything around is fracturing. It is persistently doing what is right, even when no one is watching. Each small act, when done in faith, carries the power to shift context for oneself and for others. Some say, "I don't know where to begin living out my faith." The answer is not in seeking a new job or moving to a different city. Often the answer is right where you are now, with the people you live among, in the work you are doing. There, faith can begin to be practiced. There is no need to wait for a bigger stage, because sometimes quiet actions echo longer than loud ones. Consider a mother caring for her children in silence, sleepless nights, whispered prayers, unnoticed sacrifices, all expressions of vibrant faith. Or an employee maintaining integrity in a compromising environment, no applause, no medals, but living out faith by refusing to compromise. Or someone who forgives, the one who hurt them, not out of weakness, but because they know their own heart should not be burdened with bitterness. When someone begins to live faith in practical ways, they soon realize that the inner renewal they are experiencing creates waves of outward influence. Others may not voice it, but they sense something different, a peace not easily shaken, a integrity not easily swayed, a love that does not fade. Those things move more powerfully than eloquent sermons, because words can be argued, but the reality of a transformed life is hard to deny. Imagine yourself as an experienced translator in the spiritual realm. Here is the English rendering: faithful in meaning, appropriate in idiom, arranged in coherent paragraphs without arbitrary line breaks. However, living out faith is not always easy. There will be days when you feel alone, misunderstood, unacknowledged. There will be situations where doing what is right costs you something, an opportunity, a relationship, convenience. Yet it is precisely in those moments that the most precious thing is revealed: faithfulness. Faithfulness is not something reserved for when it is easy. It is forged in the unseen, when no one is watching, when no applause comes, and when there is no guarantee. Faith does not promise that everything will go smoothly, but faith assures that you will never face reality by yourself. There is one who walks alongside, who strengthens, who guides, and each time you choose to live rightly, even in the smallest way he sees, he will never forget it. Some rewards do not arrive immediately, but they are being stored up in the unseen realm, and at a certain appointed time, what was sown in faith will bear fruit. Living out faith also opens the door to becoming an inspiration to others, not by imposing or persuading, but through a life of authenticity. People do not always need to hear you talk about your faith. Sometimes simply living it is testimony enough. A look of compassion, a word of encouragement, a sacrificial act, these can reach places where argument cannot. Gradually, life begins to spread. Ultimately, living by faith is not for recognition, but to live worthy of the grace received. Each day is a new chance to choose what is right, to sow seeds of life, to walk not by feeling, but by deep inner conviction. And through those steps, your life becomes more than a personal journey. It becomes an extension of a larger plan, far beyond what the eye can see. One of the greatest challenges in the journey of faith is not facing adversity, but walking in the silence those times when prayers seem unanswered, when every effort feels futile, and when the heavens give no sign. It is in those moments that the heart is tested, not to reveal whether it is strong or weak, but to show where it truly places its trust. Many can easily trust when everything is going well, when signs appear, when promises seem within reach. But when everything stops, when every door is closed, when there is nothing left to hold on to except the original commitment, that is when faith is refined in its true depth. There is no feeling to guide, no external encouragement, only silence long, smoldering, exhausting, as if the heavens have turned away. This is something no one wants to endure. Yet most who have taken faith seriously have had to pass through it. They become familiar with prolonged quietness. They know the loneliness of choosing what is right amid a crowd that does not understand. They know the long nights when prayer is merely a faint whisper lost in the void. Yet it is there that they come to know something greater. Faith is not anchored in emotion, but in inner assurance. There are moments when faith is no longer a joyful step, but a frail clinging, continuing forward even when nothing is visible ahead. It is keeping the heart from hardening after a long wait. It is choosing not to become bitter when everything seems against you. These things are not glamorous or flashy, but they are pure gold in the spiritual realm, because they prove that the faith in question is not a fleeting feeling, but a covenant etched deep. In the Old Testament, there is a powerful image. The servant of the prophet sees a parched sky, while his master still insists, "Keep watching." And on the seventh time, a small cloud, like the size of a man's hand, appears on the distant horizon. Sometimes delay is not denial. Silence does not mean he is not listening. Some things require time to form, not just circumstances, but the one praying. For there are petitions which, if answered immediately, would do more harm than good. True faith is not one that demands instant results. It is commitment when nothing is visible. It believes that a process is unfolding, even if the eye cannot perceive it. It keeps the heart from withering, from doubt, from surrender, not by its own strength, but by remembering the one who promised is faithful. That faithfulness does not depend on the speed of response, but on his unchanging nature. Some ask, how can I keep believing when everything seems to say otherwise? The answer is not in trying to think more positively, but in holding fast to the truths already known. Remember the times he has answered. Recall moments that seemed hopeless, yet good came. Review the journey. and you will see that it was the darkest seasons that refined and matured your faith. Sometimes what is needed is not a miracle, but a new perspective. Not every problem is solved by changing circumstances. Often, changing how we see them opens the way. Instead of asking, "Why hasn't it happened?" try asking, "What is being shaped in me through this situation?" It is patience, endurance, and faithfulness birthed in the dry seasons, virtues that cannot form if everything were always easy. Also, in the season of silence, one learns not to define self-worth by outcomes. They realize they are not titles, performance metrics, or achievements. They learn to stand firm when unrecognized, unpraised, without visible progress. In that place, they enter a deep spiritual maturity, a freedom unaffected by external circumstances. However, it should not be denied that silence brings temptation. There are times when the heart grows doubtful, weary, even angry. Yet the important thing is not to remain in those emotions. Be honest about them, but do not let them become a permanent residence. Write down your disappointments. Pour out your heart to the one you trust. And then rise and continue, not because you are strong, but because you are not alone. There is one who is still there, quietly walking alongside, just as he always has. Then, at an unexpected moment, breakthrough comes. It may be a new door, a word of confirmation, or simply a gentle peace in the soul. Whatever form it takes, it arrives like the first light after a long night, quiet, yet enough to remind you that hope was not in vain. Faith, held in the silence, will bear fruit in its season, not late, not early, but precisely on time. Living faith never remains confined to the personal boundary. When cultivated and guarded faithfully, it spreads silent yet persistent, unobtrusive yet profoundly influential, like light that cannot be hidden forever. A life guided by truth, hope, and love becomes naturally a lamp to those around. That is a wonder no one can calculate or control when true faith takes root. It blossoms and leaves a mark beyond time. People often think that to impact the world requires position, resources, or a large platform. But true influence does not begin with outward things. It begins with a person who lives rightly in the small. A timely word can save a soul. A kind act can redirect someone's path. A timely forgiveness can end a generational chain of hurt. Then, like ripples on a pond, what starts from a sincere heart spreads far beyond imagination. When someone lives faith honestly, they create an unseen sphere of influence where others feel safe to be themselves, to voice what has been silent, to take first steps back toward the sacred. They need not be teachers. Their life becomes a living message. No polished speech is necessary. The sincerity in their actions is enough to rekindle faith that had grown dim in another's heart. Some people never appear on the front page of a newspaper, never receive honors at any ceremony, yet they are the reason many others do not give up. It might be the father who rises early to pray silently for his children, the mother who endures and loves without condition, the friend who stands by when others have fallen to their lowest. These people are not named by the world, but they are remembered by the heavens. Faith is also something that can be passed down not through theory, but through life. Children learn to believe, not by the words they are taught, but by how their parents respond to crises, to the vulnerable, to adversity. Young people grasp values not from slogans, but from watching the adults around them live with integrity in the faith they profess. From that, a new generation begins to form, not through imposition, but by inheriting a current of genuine faith. We often speak of legacy as the assets, achievements, reputation one leaves behind. But there is a far more enduring legacy: spirit, faith, values that never go out of date. A life lived faithfully, even without leaving material monuments, can leave an eternal imprint. True faith does not reside in objects, but in the hearts of those touched and transformed by that life. You may never fully know the impact your life makes. You may never hear words of thanks, never see concrete results, but do not underestimate the power of faithfulness. Think of the farmer. He does not till the soil merely to stare at it, but to sow. He waits, often seeing nothing for many days. Yet beneath the surface, life is stirring, and one day, what was sown will bloom. The same is true of faith. There are seeds you plant today: kindness, endurance, forgiveness that you will not see bear fruit immediately, but they do not vanish. They lie there quietly, and in the right season they rise, bringing unexpected harvests. Perhaps the things you consider small now will become the foundation for something far greater in someone else's life. A vivid illustration is the image of lighthouses. They do not move, shout, or argue. They simply stand and shine because of their light. Ships navigate safely, avoiding hidden rocks and finding secure harbor. You too can be a lighthouse, not by making noise, but by steadfastness, not by accolades, but by living rightly, not by loud calls, but by consistent presence. Remember that you cannot control everything, but you can control how you live, how you believe, how you love, and that is enough to change the world around you. Maybe one person at a time, maybe slowly, but it is the surest way when change begins within, radiates outward, and is quietly passed to the next generation. Finally, faith is not an ornament to display, but a flame to be tended. When kept with love, faithfulness, and authentic life, it spreads from one person to a community, from one generation to another, and whether you see it or not, you are leaving an indelible mark, a legacy not measured in gold or silver, but in a life lived true to the purpose for which you were created. No one walks through life without moments of breaking. There are events that arrive without warning: a sudden farewell, a door closing when it seemed about to open, news that collapses the world within. In those times, language often fails. Ordinary comforts ring hollow. Even the strongest person can feel as if they have hit bottom. It is in those dark places that faith is tested to its core. No ready answers remain, no exuberant feelings, just the raw reality of pain confronting everything once known, learned, believed. Then a haunting question rises: does faith have a place in suffering? Is the presence of the divine still real when the heart is shattered? Is there any hope in losses that cannot be undone? The answer does not come from theory, but from real people, those who have walked through the abyss and yet stand, not because they were untouched, but because they learned to trust amid brokenness. They do not deny the pain, dismiss tears, or pretend everything is fine. Yet, despite it all, they keep their hearts soft, not allowing hurt to harden into bitterness, not letting silence become accusation, They choose to hold on to trust, not because they understand everything, but because they know who holds them. A common misunderstanding is believing faith will shield one from hurt. In truth, faith does not exempt us from pain. It equips us to pass through it without being conquered by it. It does not erase tears, but gives meaning to them so they do not fall in vain. Faith does not promise we will never fall. It promises we will not be abandoned when we do. One of the most vivid images of this is the one who tills the soil. When the ground is torn apart, it looks destroyed. The smooth surface is ripped open. Yet that very tearing is the precondition for the seed to be buried deep and have the chance to grow. Similarly, some wounds do not come to destroy, but to open depths of the soul previously untouched, to open a new dimension of dependence, not of intellect alone, but of the whole person. There will be times when prayer is nothing more than a weary sigh. There will be days when the Bible is closed and no verse resonates within. There will be long nights when faith becomes a simple decision. Today, I choose to believe. Those days are not easy, but they are where faith is forged into steel. No longer something fragile in storms, but a foundation capable of holding not only oneself, but those who are watching. Sometimes the only thing keeping a person from collapsing is the memory of kindness once received. Recall, even if it was long ago, when you felt touched, comforted, heard. Let that memory be an anchor when the present is foggy. Believe that if he was there in the past, he remains here now, though unseen, unheard, unfelt clearly. His presence does not depend on our emotions. It must also be said, not everyone emerges from brokenness with a smile immediately. Some wounds take a long time to heal. Some questions may never receive full answers in this life. But that does not mean faith has failed. In fact, it is the perseverance in what is not fully understood that most powerfully testifies to deep faith, a faith strong enough to live with mystery, humble enough to say, I don't understand, but I keep walking. Perhaps the goal of faith is not to explain everything, but to keep a person from losing themselves amid the unexplainable. When purity of heart is preserved, when forgiveness remains possible, when love is still dared, even with a bleeding heart, that is a miracle. The miracle is not avoiding pain, but not letting pain turn us into someone we were not created to be. And then, maybe after many years, when you look back, you will realize it was in the darkest places that the most precious things were formed. Not accomplishments or brilliance, but a heart that did not lose its light. That is the greatest gift faith brings, not an easy life, but a soul unbroken amid life's upheavals. There is a season in the journey of a believer that is no longer a desperate abyss, yet not quite a joyful harvest. It is the time when one begins to piece together the fragments of their life. The wound has stopped bleeding, but the ache remains. The pain has eased, yet the memory lingers. Nothing is collapsing anymore, but nothing has returned to what it once was. Between the not yet healed and the emerging, the faith begins to serve as a companion, not hurried, not pushing, but ever present. Recovery is never linear. There will be days of progress, heart feeling lighter, vision clearer, hope stirring. Then there will be dark days again, weariness, emptiness, even doubt about one's healing. The important thing is not to eliminate those days, but not to let them define the entire journey. Faith does not demand perfection. It invites persistence. When entering the process of rebuilding one's life, A person must make pivotal choices. One must choose between bitterness and forgiveness, between closing off the heart and opening it again, between replaying the past and authoring a new story. Each such decision is like a brick in reconstructing the foundation. Faith is the mortar that holds the scattered pieces together, allowing something new to sprout from what has been broken. Many hope that once the pain has passed, they can return to their former self. The truth is, no one goes back to exactly who they were, and that is not necessarily a bad thing. Wounds, when rightly tended, deepen a person, make them more compassionate and more authentic. The cracks in the heart rather than stains become places where light can enter. Losses rather than final endings become the starting points of a new chapter. More beautiful, precisely because they have been matured by what was endured. In that journey of healing, the hardest thing is often not forgiving others, but forgiving oneself. Thoughts like, if only I had done it differently, why didn't I see it sooner, and is this my fault, rise up repeatedly. Yet faith is not built on explaining everything. It is built on mercy. Let that mercy extend over yourself. Forgiveness does not mean denying consequences, but choosing not to let them continue to bind your future. Also, in the season of restoration, one must relearn something seemingly simple: to live slowly, in a world that urges you to bounce back, to get over it, to normalize quickly. Listening to your own heart becomes an act of courage. Healing cannot be rushed. A broken branch will not knit simply because we want it to. It needs time, the right environment, and protection. So does the soul. There will come a time when you smile again for the first time in a long while. It might be when you allow yourself to dream a new dream, to lay down a small plan, or simply when a beloved song causes your lips to curve. Those moments are signs not that everything is fully healed, but that life is returning. And each small sign is evidence. You are moving forward. Slowly, perhaps, but steadily. Remember, recovery does not mean forgetting. You do not have to erase to be free. On the contrary, when you learn to carry memories without letting them crush you, you have come far. Some memories never fade, but they cease to be wounds and become scars. Testimony to a battle you have survived by a strength that was not solely your own. There will also come a time when you are called to help someone else through what you once endured, not as someone superior, but as someone who has been there, and your experience, once thought to be a burden, will become the key that unlocks a door for someone in despair. You do not need eloquent words. You only need genuine presence. The suffering do not need philosophy. They need someone beside them saying, I don't have the answers, but I will not leave you. And then you realize, faith is not merely what keeps you from falling, but what lifts you up after you have fallen. It does not just help you survive, it helps you live again, live more deeply, more authentically, with greater gratitude, not because everything is perfect, but because you know that even when things shatter, there remains something that cannot be taken away. Trust in a being who never abandons you. So if you are in the process of rebuilding, keep going. Even if each day adds only one brick, even if some days you must pause to rest, to cry, to plead for strength, that is okay. You are not walking alone. There is one walking beside you, not to pull you into a sprint, but to step with you through every rough stretch. He is the reason you are still standing. He will be the reason you take the next step. There is a hard truth. yet one full of power, seasons of pain. If they do not destroy faith, make it deeper than ever. No one emerges from hardship unchanged. If faith survives the storm, it is no longer something fleeting, but a foundation unshakable. Upon that foundation, a new life begins to take shape, not like the old, but better, brighter, braver. Those who have been crushed by failure, betrayed, or by loss often see life with different eyes. Not eyes of pessimism, but sharp, humble ones that know how to listen and empathize. They no longer chase shallow dreams. They understand that true joy is not in loud success, but in enduring peace. They no longer feel the need to prove themselves because they know where real value comes from. After passing through the abyss, they do not live to impress, but to live rightly. They no longer pursue form over essence. They seek depth over the easily attained. And the most beautiful thing is this: they live more lightly, yet exert greater influence because they speak not from books, but from experience. They love not with words, but with presence. They make no empty promises, but walk alongside in truth. From the brokenness, a new vision slowly emerges. They begin to see what previously went unnoticed. The worth of small things, a family meal, an unexpected call, a quiet afternoon, each becomes precious. What was once taken for granted, like honesty, fidelity, a timely word of encouragement, now becomes the bedrock of how they treat others. They no longer overlook anything, because they know everything is fragile and therefore worthy of reverence. And then something becomes clearer. They were not rescued from ruin merely to continue existing, but to live with renewed purpose. What they endured is not a period, but a comma leading into another chapter. The old wounds become treasures now, because from them they can help others, lighting the path for those still in darkness. Just as they once climbed out, no one can give hope like someone who lost it and found it again. No one can heal like someone who was hurt and learned to forgive. No one can impart strength like someone who fell and rose by a power beyond themselves. And when they give back what they once received, they do more than bless others. They continue to grow on their own journey. This deep transformation is quiet. There is no spotlight, no grand declaration. There is simply a person living genuinely in silence, with gratitude, with clear vision of what to hold, what to release, what to protect. They are not easily drawn into conflict, nor easily wounded by words, because they have endured something greater and they know what matters most. Joy, too, that becomes different. It is no longer fleeting excitement, but a deep gladness from within, knowing you still breathe, still can love, still have the chance to live a meaningful life. They do not wait for the perfect day to be happy. They find value in the ordinary. And in that very simplicity, their life becomes like a gentle fragrance, unforced, yet soothing to others. From a place once in ruins, a new mission slowly unfolds. It doesn't have to be a grand project or a prominent role. Sometimes it is simply lifting up someone whose spirit is faltering. It is writing a few lines of sharing from personal experience. It is sitting silently beside someone in pain. It is living an imperfect life, yet faithful, becoming a quiet witness to the mercy that once touched you. When faith has passed through fire, it is no longer easily shaken by praise or criticism. It becomes a compass, a guiding wind, a fire that warms not only one person, but those who walk alongside. Then that life ceases to be a story of mere survival and becomes a song of resurrection bearing deep, low notes, yet woven into a melody of hope. Perhaps the greatest recompense for loss is not that everything is restored to exactly how it was, but that you become a new person, steadier, more generous, more awake. You do not wish for the pain to return, but if someone were to ask, if you hadn't gone through that, could you be who you are today? You would likely smile through tears and answer, no. And that is when you understand. You did not just endure. You rose above. After seasons of testing, after being healed, after rising from breaks that seemed irreparable, a miracle begins to happen. A person steps into new ground, not a perfect place without tears, but into an inner freedom where the spirit is no longer bound by past or fear. It is the place where one can lift their head, breathe deeply, and declare, I am alive and I am living truly. Oh, abundant life is not some distant concept. It is reality for those willing to place their trust in a being greater than their circumstances. It does not come from material satisfaction, nor from the perfection of the surrounding situation. It is a spiritual posture when a person knows they are loved, knows they are held, and knows they are living in alignment with their deepest purpose. It is not a life without storms, but a life whose heart remains at peace amid them. The fullness that faith brings is quiet. It needs no banners, no awards, no external validation. It is an inner sufficiency such that there is no grasping, no racing, no envy. A person living in abundance can see another's success and genuinely rejoice. They can face failure without collapsing. They can lose something precious without losing their gentle self. But to enter such a life, one must pass through a threshold, letting go of old narratives about oneself, about God, and about life. Many believe they are unworthy of abundant life because of their past, their mistakes, their unhealed wounds. The truth is, those who were once broken, in pain, and lost are the very ones invited into new life, not because they are perfect, but because they have been willing to be transformed. Grace does not choose the qualified. Grace makes a way for the willing. Living in abundance is living with the clear awareness that every breath is a gift. Nothing is taken for granted. Life is no longer a burden. Every morning is a privilege. Every opportunity given is a chance to sow love. Every encounter is a piece in the journey. Those in abundance do not waste time in bitterness, nor hurry after what no longer belongs to them. They live here, now, with wholehearted gratitude. They are also no longer confined to the narrow safety of fear. They once feared and overcame. They once thought they could not, but here they stand. So they dare to step out, to try again, to trust the new not hastily, but with courage that has been refined. They understand that living is not merely existing, but fulfilling a calling, and that calling need not be grand. Sometimes it is simply being faithful each day to what has been entrusted. When entering abundant life, one begins to steward time, energy, and mind with greater discernment. They stop exhausting themselves on fruitless arguments. No longer let trivialities scatter their focus. They begin to recognize what is worth investing in and what must be released. They become free from the need to please everyone. Inner peace becomes their compass, guiding their steps gently yet purposefully. One of the clearest expressions of abundant life is the ability to give. When a person no longer feels lack, they become generous, not just materially, but in empathy, patience, and forgiveness. They do not cling tightly to what they have, but share willingly, knowing that the more they give, the more they receive. They do not live with the mindset of, I must hold on, but with the spirit of, I have been given to be a blessing. And then, one day, they look back over the journey, the losses, the wounds, the halting steps, and instead of regret, they feel gratitude. For through all of it, they were shaped, sharpened, formed. They are no longer who they once were, and that is good. They have become deeper, more authentic, and closer to the image their Creator intended for them than ever before. Abundant life does not promise an easy road, but it assures that you will never live wasted. Everything you do, every person you touch, every step you take carries meaning. Not because you manufacture that value, but because you are living in alignment with the life flowing through you, and that truth touches others not by striving to influence, but simply by living authentically who you are. So if you have weathered hardship, risen, and recovered, step into the new land. Don't linger at the border out of fear that you're not enough. Walk in with humility and trust. For there, life is more than survival. It is abundance waiting for you. No one can live it for you. And nothing can stop you if you decide, from today, I will live fully. Abundant life is not merely a personal experience. It is designed to ripple outward. When one is healed, they don't hoard that healing. They are invited to become part of a new community, a place where brokenness is welcomed, where truth is not hidden, where love is not conditional. It is within such a community that healing is sustained, growth is nurtured, and purpose is awakened daily. Many walk the recovery path alone, thinking they must be strong or steady enough before connecting with others. But the truth is, healing is incomplete in isolation. The deepest wounds often originate in relationships from betrayal, abandonment, harsh words, and the silence of loved ones. And it is also within healthy connections that those wounds are truly mended. The community that abundant life forms is not a gathering of perfect people. They come together not because all are whole, but because they know that in weakness, they need one another. They understand that maturity does not come from absolute independence, but from the courage to lean on others in healthy ways. Truth and mercy become the foundation of every connection. Truth, so there is no pretense. And mercy, so no one is excluded because of their frailties. For such a community to exist, there must be people willing to live authentically, those who admit they've fallen, yet choose to rise, those unafraid to share their journey, not hiding their shadows, not crafting a facade of, I'm okay, when their heart is broken. They aren't skilled pretenders, but seasoned souls who understand that others don't need a polished face, they need a heart that feels. The presence of such a community is an immeasurable gift. Within it, there is someone who listens without judgment, someone who intercedes when you're weak, someone who dares to speak truth when you veer off course, not to condemn, but to draw you back. Every word, every embrace, every shared tear is the adhesive binding fragments once thought irreparable. There, people learn to love again and to be loved again without condition. This community is not built on vague, common goals, but upon a sacred foundation, that all are being led by a loving one. No one is the center. No one is the main character. Each is part of a larger picture, a body with many parts, as the ancient letter wrote, "If one part suffers, all suffer. If one part is honored, all rejoice." 1 Corinthians 12:26. It is in that unity that once lonely hearts find a spiritual home. Imagine yourself as an experienced spiritual translator. Here is the English version, rendered faithfully, with appropriate diction and flowing paragraphs, without breaking into tiny fragments. However, building a community is not easy. Old wounds can still cause us to question kindness. Small collisions can be magnified by unhealed fear. Therefore, a community cannot survive without patience and forgiveness. Each person within it must learn to see one another, not through the lens of expectation, but through the gaze of compassion. When someone stumbles, others do not turn away or pass judgment, they draw near, lift them up, and remind them, "You still belong here." The bond in such a community is not a binding that suffocates freedom, but a tether that allows each person to grow into truth. It is a place where no one has to wear a mask, where hard questions are not avoided, where pain is neither ignored nor endlessly nurtured. That community urges each individual toward life, not denying the past, but refusing to be forever defined by it. When a community lives this way, they become a light, needing no loud proclamation or self-promotion. That light radiates from the way they live, with integrity, kindness, and grace. They do not have to prove anything, because genuine life carries its own persuasive power. The lost see it and know that there is a place where they can be healed. The weary see it and breathe out, "Here, I don't have to strive to be accepted." And so, one by one, people are guided back into the land of life. That is the wonder of a community built on abundant life. It is not merely a refuge for the hurting, but a cradle for dreams reborn. There, things once thought dead: faith, hope, the hunger for life are rekindled. Each person lives not only for themselves, but for one another. No one is a burden. No one is excess. Every soul has worth, carries a portion of truth, and is anticipated and welcomed. Then that community does not only hold one another, they go out, they enter the world not to condemn or argue, but to love, to serve, to live authentically. They don't need to prove who is right or wrong. They simply continue to live rightly, and that life becomes a living testimony, proof that healing is real, renewal is real, unconditional love is real, and a community built on those things is hope for a generation. In the end, what you need is not another explanation, not a perfect plan, and certainly not a passing emotion. What you need, and always have needed, is a deep reminder you are not alone on this journey. There is one who walks with you, never leaving, never weary, never losing hope in you, even when you have lost hope in yourself. The abundant life into which you have been invited is not a distant destination beyond the horizon. It is not locked behind impossible conditions. It begins right where you stand, where you pause, look up, and choose to trust again. A small decision, but enough to shift destiny, just an inner response, a quiet assent. I agree. I'm willing to move. End of quote. Often you think you must be strong enough before you can begin, but that is not so. The truth is, It is when you are weak that you truly begin, because when you release your own striving, you make room for the Almighty to act. And in that journey, He does not ask you to take grand strides. He only asks you to take the next step. One step, faithful, small, simple, but it is a step of faith. You will stumble. You will have moments of doubt. You will have days so tired you want to give it all up. But remember, life is not built on your emotions, but on the unfailing faithfulness of the one who called you. Even if your soul is shaken, His mercy never changes. Even if you run away, He waits. Even if you are silent, He still whispers love. The road ahead does not promise to be easy, but it is guaranteed to be worth it. Old wounds may still smolder. Deferred dreams may still feel incomplete. Unanswered questions may still hang in the air. Yet among all of that, you will learn the most precious truth, that the presence of the companion is more valuable than every answer. That true peace does not come from everything going your way, but from knowing you are held in safe arms. I will go before you and level the mountains. I will break bronze doors and cut through iron bars. Isaiah 45:2. This is not an empty promise. It is a sacred commitment that He will make a way, clear the path, go before you, and no one can thwart what He has ordained for your life. No matter how many doors are shut, no matter how the world turns away, the path He marks out will endure steady, intact, paved with unshakable love. Abundant life is a journey. Each day you learn something new. Each fall you rise with a bit more growth. Each dry season deepens your appreciation for the value of rain. And whenever you feel you haven't gone far, turn back and look. You are no longer who you were. Something in you has been transformed quietly, yet enduringly. That is the evidence that He is still at work in your heart. Then, one day, perhaps without recognizing it, you will be the one to approach another weary soul and say, I have been where you are. I too was afraid, exhausted, ready to give up, but I was held by a love I could not fully comprehend. Yet I knew it was real. And today, I'm here to tell you, you will be okay. You will be healed. You will find yourself again. In that moment, you become a living witness. You do not merely speak of hope, you embody it. You do not only talk about healing, you are the proof that healing is real. Every step you take is no longer solitary, but carries influence. You no longer live for yourself alone. You live like a lamp, small, yet enough to light the way for someone lost. Your journey does not end here. It has only just begun. But you do not need to know everything ahead. You only need to know this. There is a hand still waiting to grasp yours. A call still echoing above the noise. And a door open to you, never closing. So, beloved, rise. Brush the dust from your weary feet. Lift your head and step, not perfectly, but faithfully, not knowing all, but certain of one thing: you are not walking alone. The one who began the good work in you will complete it, until that life is made whole in glory. I bless you. May you rest in unchanging love. Be strong in unwavering faith, and be filled with joy no one can take away. I pray you will know when to move, when to wait, and when to trust again even when you feel nothing. Keep walking, beloved, and when doubt creeps in, come back here, to these words written for you, to remind you that you have been called chosen, and destined for life. No one can alter that. No one can take it from you, because that life is yours, and it begins now. Thank you for listening to today's message. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications, so together we can receive the living word, build steadfast faith, and walk in the boundless love of the Lord. Amen.